Welcome to Pillow Talks with Victor, where love lingers in words and silence tells the rest. Tonight's story is about two souls who found healing not in grand gestures, but in the quiet company of a stranger. This is Bittersweet Hope, the bench by the lake. It began one autumn evening when the sky was painted in fading gold, and the lake shimmered with that gentle reflection that seems to hold the world still. Ethan came here every day, same time, same bench, saying nothing to anyone, just watching the ripples move like the water might one day return what it had taken. He wasn't old, but his eyes were, the kind of tired that comes not from work, but from holding on to something long gone. That evening someone was already sitting there, a woman in her early 30s, wrapped in a light grey coat with a scarf tucked neatly under her chin. She had a book open but wasn't reading, just staring ahead with the same heavy stillness. When Ethan walked closer, she shifted slightly, but didn't move away. He nodded, and she nodded back. That was how it started, in silence. For days, neither spoke. They just shared that bench, two strangers connected by quiet. Ethan with his thermos of coffee, and her with a notebook she never wrote in. Sometimes he'd catch her tracing invisible words across the page. Sometimes she'd notice him whispering something under his breath to the water. The world moved on around them, children laughing, joggers passing, couples holding hands, but their bench felt like a place untouched by time, a small pocket of stillness where grief and healing could breathe side by side. Then one evening, she spoke first. Her voice was soft, like someone afraid to break a fragile spell. "Do you come here for the silence?" she asked, "or for the sound of the water?" He smiled faintly and said, "I'm not sure anymore. Maybe both." She closed her notebook and nodded. "Me too." They never exchanged names. They didn't need to. It was as if they both knew that what brought them here was it meant to be defined. Over time, silence gave way to short, honest sentences. Ethan told her he used to come here with his wife, how they would sit together after dinner, counting ducks on the lake, laughing about how time moved slower by the water. Then one night, she was gone. A sudden illness. No warning. Just silence. He returned the next day, not because it made things easier, but because not coming would have meant letting her memory fade. The woman listened closely, not with pity but with understanding. When he finished, she said softly, "I come here because I left something too, or maybe someone left me." Then she spoke of her life in the city, the noise, the man who said all the right things, but meant none of them, and how she eventually stopped recognizing the person she'd become. The lake was her escape, her quiet rebellion against everything that demanded she move on too fast. Days turned into weeks, and the air grew colder. Still, they met at the same bench, wrapped in scarves and quiet laughter. Ethan brought coffee for two, and she brought a new notebook. This time, she began to write. Sometimes they sat for hours without saying a word. Other times they filled the air with stories until the moon rose. Every evening ended the same way, with a simple, "See you tomorrow." It wasn't a promise, it was hope disguised as routine. But one day the bench was empty. Ethan waited until sunset, then until dark. The next day, he came again. Still nothing. The days turned into weeks, the silence heavier than ever. He started to wonder, had he said something wrong? Had she left for good? Or had the lake simply taken her too? But deep inside, he knew she was real, because the space beside him wasn't empty. It was full of her laughter, her quiet, her warmth. Then one morning he found something lying on the bench. A notebook. Her notebook. He opened it carefully, his fingers trembling at the first page. In neat, delicate handwriting it read, "For Ethan, thank you for reminding me that silence can heal. I've gone home to try again. Maybe one day I'll find my way back here. Don't stop sitting by the lake. Some of us need to believe that kindness still waits there. Ethan sat for a long while, feeling the breeze carry her words into the water. The lake shimmered as though it had understood. He placed the notebook on his lap and whispered, "You did find your way back. You're right here." Years passed. Seasons painted the same trees in new colors. The bench grew older. So did he. But every evening, Ethan returned, pouring 2 cups of coffee even when one stayed untouched. Sometimes strangers sat beside him, a tired mother, a heartbroken boy, an old man who missed someone too. Ethan listened to all of them, quietly, patiently, as she once did. Because somewhere between her leaving and his staying, he had learned that love doesn't always return as you expect. Sometimes it lingers as warmth in the wind, as ripples in still water, as stories pass to others who sit where you once waited. The lake became his confessional, the bench his companion, and the memory of her, his reason to keep showing up. He didn't wait for her anymore, not exactly. But every time the sun dipped below the horizon and the world turned quiet, he felt her presence in the air, the way she used to tilt her head when she listened, the faint smell of her coffee drifting across the breeze. And sometimes, when the wind moved just right, he thought he heard her voice saying, "See you tomorrow." Maybe that's what hope really is, the quiet belief that even in loss, something beautiful still waits to meet you halfway. And sometimes it waits by a bench, beside a lake, under the same fading sky. This was Bittersweet Hope, the bench by the lake.